Hi, everyone. I have Fluffy with me again this week. Chocolate is playing hard to get and turning it into a game. And I'm so glad that I have one of my furry souls with me, because I would like to begin with prayers for all the citizens of Ukraine who want and deserve freedom from the evil that is tyrannical Putin. New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman wrote today, quote, "The battle for Ukraine unfolding before our eyes has the potential to be the most transformational event in Europe since World War II and the most dangerous confrontation for the world since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis," close quote. If non-human intelligences in this and other dimensions are closely observing this Earth crisis, pray for their help to banish the evil Putin and to restore Ukraine's freedom from bully brutality. And I want to thank all of you so much for helping this Earthfiles YouTube channel to break through 200,000 subscribers this week. We're going to celebrate in two ways in the upcoming very special Earthfiles YouTube podcast on March 23rd. First, we're going to be live for 2 hours, and that night we will lead off the 200,000 subscriber celebration with a video recorded interview about UFOs that I will have with Lou Elizondo, former director of ATIP, the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Second, it was so fun the last time we could see you and hear your voices for questions to me that we would like to do it again for this March 23rd 200,000 subscriber celebration. This is March 2nd, so it gives you 2 weeks to submit your questions on videos from wherever you are in this world, like you did last year in our 175,000 summer solstice celebration on June 23rd in 2021. Now here is how to get your recordings to Ian and Brad for organizing and for editing. Send your recorded question by email to questions@earthfiles.com, deadline to receive March 16th, 2022. And now I want to share with you an extraordinary communication that I received from a confidential, long-time, trusted military and aerospace source in my career, who is deeply knowledgeable about UFOs and ETs. It came after my February 16th Earthfiles YouTube channel broadcast, in which Buddy Bolton in Bronx, New York, remote viewed differences between tall whites and the Nordic-type species of other intelligences in our Milky Way galaxy interstellar neighborhood. Quote, "I listened to your recent YouTube February 16 show, and I was very intrigued through the whole program. The remote viewer gentleman that you had on really came across on point, more than he realized. He had accurately explained the differences between the tall whites and the Nordic-type species, especially when he said the tall whites look chalky, like chalk. The other facts were also very accurate. His description of the Nordics being somewhat more military-like is very factual as well. Linda, one thing about this remote viewer individual: either he is a truly gifted remote viewer, or he is someone very knowledgeable about things only a few people do know. When we talked about entanglement and communication, he is describing quantum tunneling and instant communication between vast distances in the universe. This is exactly how we communicate with deep space explorations currently. The aircraft causing most of the atmospheric boom sounds are correct in his analysis. One of the craft is the pumpkin seed and is the test bed vehicle for the next evolutionary stage of satellite kill vehicles. And now, before sharing Buddy Bolton's remote viewing of the Trantaloid insect civilization on Epsilon Eridani, that's about 10.5 light years from Earth, I would like to do a short review of the Serpo-Trantaloid information, allegedly given to President Ronald Reagan in a recorded Camp David briefing March 6 to 8, 1981. Serpo 27A release. CIA, DIA, NSA briefing about ETs for President Ronald Reagan, March 6 to 8, 1981 at Camp David, Maryland. William Casey, CIA Director. Quote, "Okay, give the President the names, caretaker." The caretaker. "Okay, thank you. Mr. President, the 5 species, and they mean extraterrestrials, are called ebens, archeloids, quadloids, heptaloids, and trantaloids. These names were given to the alien species by the intelligence community, specifically MJ5. The ebens are friendly, the trantaloids are the dangerous ones. We call the hostile aliens simply that, HAV, meaning hostile alien visitors. MJ12 placed that code on them back in the 1950s. President Reagan, you mean these HAVs have been visiting us and kidnapping our people since the 1950s? CIA Director Casey, Mr. President, we have some indication that they might have been doing this for some time. President Reagan, my God, just knowing we have names for these things is amazing. Which one did we capture? CIA Director Casey, Mr. President, we have a Trantaloid, but it is dead. We captured it in 1961 in Canada, and we had it in captivity until 1962 when it died. Advisor number 1, Mr. President, these hostile aliens are pretty sneaky. They seem to appear and disappear, which is beyond our technical understanding. They also seem to float or defy gravity. We have actual photographs of them doing this, recorded by a military intelligence unit in New Mexico. Advisor number 4, Mr. President, the Trantaloid technology is probably 1,000 years more advanced than ours, maybe even more. Some of their materials are not found on this planet, strange materials, nothing like Earth. We found several strange spots on the Eben and Trantaloid star charts. We concluded these spots were space tunnels, as the Ebens described, shortcuts from one point of space to another. And again, this is Alcubierre warp drive physics. According to the Ebens, the Trantaloids use a different form of propulsion, something like matter versus antimatter. A great deal of energy is released. But we do not have the capability to do that. Advisor number 4. Mr. President, these Trantaloid aliens can imitate humans. They can look like blonde humans. However, they are not blonde. They are really ugly-looking insects, but they can imitate looking like humans. President Reagan, how in the world did they do that? Advisor, they have the ability to change their bodies. As I said before, they are 1,000 years ahead of us in technology and probably every other science. But which blondes do they imitate? There are tall Nordics and shorter blondes that have been sketched by people in the abduction syndrome and are supposed to be from a variety of solar systems, such as Sirius, the Pleiades and Procyon, but the hostile insects who camouflage as blonde humans are said to be from the Epsilon Eridani solar system. Advisor number 4. The Ebens are the ones who gave us that Epsilon Eridani information. We know the star group. It is close to our solar system in astronomical terms, maybe 10.5 light years away. The Trantaloids are actually closer to us in Epsilon Eridani than the Ebens are in the Zeta Reticuli binary star system. Not far to the left and up a little bit, right above Earth and our sun, is the Trantaloid star Epsilon Eridani, only 10.5 light years from Earth. It's an orange dwarf star that's cooler than our yellow G spectrum sun. I asked remote viewer Buddy Moulton to try remote viewing the insect Trantaloids, and here are his insights. If the tall whites are superior in technology, morality, and so many different levels, how did they come to identify the Trantaloids on Epsilon Eridani as a huge and terrible threat to other civilizations in this part of the Milky Way galaxy?
Tall whites feel duty-bound to prevent the destruction of worlds that have life forms on them. So it's more like a duty. They feel a duty against these Trantaloids. You can imagine in a universe that's bigger than any rainforest, there's all types of life. And these Trantaloids are insectoid class, and they are a primary species. They were never created by anyone else in the past. They're just themselves. And like an insect, they have different classes of types. They're hostile to all races, especially mantids, humanoids, and other insectoids.
Did you get any sense of why they would be so hateful in wanting to destroy humanoids and the praying mantises?
They're just about themselves. They're strictly about their own survival, and if anything else is in the direction of where they want to colonize and expand to, it's about themselves. These Trantaloids are the sociopaths of the extraterrestrial world. They don't have a concern for another form of life. It doesn't matter to them. Killing another life is nothing to them. It has no meaning. They're only their own species. So they're incredibly hostile, fiercely territorial. They colonize an area, and they colonize it not like other biological species do. We oftentimes colonize electronically first, sending probes and things that watch over the solar systems, how planets develop. These guys, they breed so quickly, they physically occupy these solar systems. So they're fiercely territorial.
Why do they want Earth?
I think it's just on their path. You can calculate how quickly a race has spread in the past, and then you can make projections of how quickly and where it will keep going in the future. And so there's going to be a clash at some point.
Did you get any insight about the holoforms that they are supposed to be so advanced with that even though they are these large brownish insects, that they can project a holographic or holoform that looks like a blonde, blue-eyed human and walk among us and we would not know?
It's just technology. The ability to do it underneath the observant eye of other advanced species, like a spy slipping in. These creatures have spaceships. They have these very interesting hands, claws that have this pad on the inside, and it can raise portions of the pad and be able to press buttons, and it's able to evolve technology. That's a major reason why they could get and evolve technology is because of their manipulatable hands. And like some insects here, other creatures here on Earth and flowers here on Earth, to us, they would look brown. But if you look at them under ultraviolet light, they're really very colorful. And I drew an image of one of them on the right side in their colors, and the left side how we would see them, just as brown. They have multiple different ways to communicate. They have these organs behind their mouth, below their eyes, that makes a whole bunch of different clicks and sounds and shrills and ultra-low frequency sounds that can be heard over great distances. They also have a organ on their back. It's a language. It's over hundreds of words or phrases, concepts they can communicate with the different types of sense. We would say that they stink. If we were around multiples of these beings, they would smell horrific to us. But it's a whole language to them. And, part of me was worried and upset about the encroachment of these beings. But in a way, there are creatures like that on Earth. The universe is so dynamic and it's not like they hate humans. It's that we're in their path. When I see a lion attack a gazelle, I'm like, stop that lion, but the lion, it's not evil, it's nature. I'm not going to let a lion eat my kid, But these Trantaloids are very frightening because of their technology level. Anything that would oppose humans, oppose biological like us, that has that level of technology is something to worry about.
Right.
So thankfully there's a council protecting the planet of like-minded beings.
So you did remote view a council that is wanting to perhaps eliminate the Trantaloids because they are such a threat.
Yes, and also there's a spreading kind of AI, non-biological, that's also encroaching, is extremely advanced. So there's a lot of threats. There's yin and yang and good and bad, and there's this balance. And I always think like the matter overcame the antimatter in the universe, and I pray there's more matter. I hope that good is the same way. More good advanced species than these evil species.
Well, this comes to the tall whites that I have been told they do collaborate with the Nordics, possibly the praying mantises, but that at least the tall whites are the brains, and that they do collaborate with the Nordics, which are physical, and that there is an effort to try to protect Earth from the Trantaloids. And this was all in that briefing for Ronald Reagan after he became president, the SERPO briefing at Camp David, March 6 to 8, 1981. And the Defense Intelligence Agency analysts who were there with the director of the CIA were laying out for President Reagan that these were insects that could camouflage themselves on Earth as blonde, blue-eyed humans. That's in the transcript. And Ronald Reagan asks, well, how in the world would they do that? And the answer is holographic or holoform technology. And that another area that I have been told is that the Trantaloids can mix up timelines, control timelines, grab things from the future to the past to the future, that they have superior ability to manipulate timelines. Did you get anything on that?
No, I didn't, but I got more of that from the tall whites. We've been stunted by not getting that information. So many sectors of our society are very uneducated. And I'm so thankful disclosure is moving forward now. I can complain about the past, but what I would love is the government to pull out the crafts. Stop the BS. Just go for it. Every government already knows. The people are the ones in the dark.
Well, I'm eager for your comments and questions because even Buddy and I laughed at one point in the interview. He is such a good remote viewer, and we were talking about the implications of the variety that has been described for decades of standing up alligators, standing up lizards, tall whites, the varieties, and now what appears to be strong information about a insect group, and that there is the Zerg in one of the Star System theatrical productions, and that they want to assimilate all life forms in a kind of an obsession for having genetic perfection. And so these themes are out there, whether it's in television, literature, movies, on the web. But where I am trying to understand and report about as accurately as I can, given the fact that the policies of denial about information concerning all of this has been denied since World War II, that Buddy and I were laughing that it is so incredible, not just the Trantaloids, but that list, in that list having to do with the ebens and the archeloids and the haploids that are supposed to be a combination of something like a lizard and possibly an insect or something else, that it seems like science fiction, and yet this is the universe that we are in, and that this information is coming from very serious people in very serious positions that know a great deal and have been covering up for a long time. And to me, there is something refreshing about being able to share with you at least information that I think falls into the category of that it should be known and discussed, and that the more we know, the stronger and better we will be in what seems like a very dangerous decade now in Earth. We need more information to be stronger. And I hope you all have received this information tonight in that spirit, because everybody has the problem of how do you prove. But in this instance, I know for a long time the source. Extremely accurate, extremely intelligent. And he would say, if he were there or here, that this is one of our government's greatest concerns. Well, let me know if you think the time is here for all of us to have knowledge about what our governments think should be kept secret. All right, on that note, Ian, I'm going to turn to you for comments, questions.
Thank you, Linda. With the thoughts about what's happening in Ukraine heavy on everyone's mind, we have the first question. Linda, if nuclear weapons were ever used, which species of which visitors would help us and intervene? It's
my understanding, as we reported 2 weeks ago, that the Trantaloids are part of that first long interview with Buddy, looking at the differences between the tall whites, the Nordics. What about the Trantaloids? What about several of those questions that we were asking him to remote view? And that he so clearly sees, but I have a huge amount of other information that I wish that I could show you everything, introduce you to everyone that I know who has this knowledge, but I can't, because we're in a world where it's all supposed to be kept secret. But the best source, going back a long time ago, said that the tall whites and their skin looks to the human eye like chalk, quite different from the Nordics. That the tall whites are considered to be trying to help us, and that they, the tall whites, on a scale with the Trantaloids, at least this is as much understanding as I have of tonight, they are technologically as advanced, perhaps even more so than the Trantaloids, but they are both at least 1,000 years beyond us. The Trantaloids have a vested interest in trying to preserve and evolve life. They revere life in this universe, is my understanding. They are strong, they are unique, in many ways. What would their vested interest be in this solar system? It might be because they and others are the ones who manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create not just Homo sapiens sapien, but all the way back to Homo erectus. The tall whites and the Nordics may have played a very long role on this planet in a variety of experiments, because this planet, first and foremost, as I understand it, is considered to be a lab. A lab because it is one of the few planets that has a temperature zone and a lot of water and has the ability to sustain and generate a tremendous variety of life forms, and that is not universal, that a planet like this is not unique, but is rare. So the vested interest in preserving Homo sapiens sapien might be because the tall whites and the Nordics and others, I think the Greys have been involved for a long time, but they're a different category, and that there are species such as perhaps some reptilians who have not wanted Homo sapiens sapien to be the dominant surface life, but that the Nordics and the tall whites, especially the tall whites, have felt that it was, as Buddy said, their duty. They have a duty, they feel a duty to help life survive in this universe, or life that they have a vested interest in. And so it implies some kind of a bond that we know nothing about. We have been told nothing, but that there are people who are working in military and science and medicine and aerospace who know quite a bit. And they have talked to me in some depth. So I'm trying to share with you information in a context that I personally do not find it frightening. I find it fascinating. And that if the people that I've talked to feel strongly that the tall whites working with the Nordics are at least equal balance to the Trantaloids, I would say that I feel that that's probably true. But more than all of that, I cannot fathom how political leaders, the power brokers, the so-called government leaders, could go one more year without announcing to this whole planet, all the struggling nations, the Ukraine, and all that it stands for on Earth now, at what feels like an extremely difficult time, that it will go on being a difficult time. We need to know. We humans need to be proved that there are other vastly intelligent, vastly capable, other life forms that actually give a flip about whether we die or whether we survive. So I hope in sharing this with you tonight, it's not the complete, it's the beginning of a story. It's the beginning. There's facets. We have facets. We do not have whole pictures. I would like to ask any of you who are in the audience tonight who work with information that relates to the Trantaloids, the Archeloids, the Quadloids, the Haploids, and the Trantaloids, If you have firm information, try to communicate with me in some way that can have some depth. And I know that there are a lot of people who do have pieces of all of this, and they're told never to talk. Well, we're never, ever going to grow up as a species until we are introduced, quite frankly and honestly, to what is out there that we know about, and physics that goes beyond anything that we understand on Earth now. So Ian, hopefully in the chat and the comments, there may be some people who can contribute to this growing, I'm going to say, multifaceted picture of multiple life forms in just our part, our little arm of the Milky Way galaxy, and that sky star map that I have put together myself based on studying and getting input, that it is something that I hope we can keep adding to, and knowing that star map is quite real. Those are real solar systems, real suns, and the part that we have been denied are who are living on which planets orbiting those specific star systems. And there are a lot of people on this planet who have an answer to that. So my goal is to keep bringing to you information that hopefully pushes against all the policies of denial in a constructive way, while we're waiting for the big crack, the whole big enchilada. We're not alone in the universe, and here Webb is showing us artificial structures on a planet around a solar system. That's what I hope happens this year. Okay, Ian.
Yes, Linda, I think it is helpful. People are now identifying with the specific beings that they're interacting with. Christina says, I think I've seen a chalky white alien coming through my wall years ago. It left a white residue that stained the wooden panels on the wall. Linda, do you think this was at all white?
I have never encountered that specific description before in any of my work, what you have just written. But I am open to talking with you about it. Could you communicate with Ian and confidentially give me your phone number so that I could follow up and we could talk about that?
Yeah, we'll ask her in the chat. I think we may have communicated before, so let's keep that dialogue going. Linda, Susie Sue says, can you ask Linda if the others are here to protect us from ourselves, and which species or race has the most favourable relationship with us?
I think it is the tall whites that all along for a very long time, going back for centuries. I think it's the tall whites who have worn the cloaks where so many people in the abduction syndrome over the decades that I've been studying, a figure tall with a cloak, where the cloak comes like this, and if there's any light in a room, that's the way it's been said to me several times, the cloak will shadow the face. But there have been instances where, not many, but a couple, where the tall figure in the totally draped in this cloak, one particular case, the being came into a room, was beside the bed, no little grays, nothing else, just this cloaked figure. There was I believe it was a outside light that cast just a beam into that bedroom. And the person woke up as the cloak, whatever was in the cloak, was leaning forward like this, leaned right into this always there street light, not strong, but just enough. And he saw blonde hair. It was a man. And he saw blonde hair in the cloak. Now, the tall whites don't have blonde hair. That would be a Nordic, perhaps working with the tall whites. The tall whites have white, white, white hair. White, white, white skin. They're really white. And I remember maybe going back 20 years ago when there was a particular project I was working on. It had a lot to do with what are the descriptions from people in the human abduction syndrome. How broad and wide are their descriptions? And so I was collecting a lot of letters, and I remember that there was another 2 or 3 maybe, where somebody saw a shock of blonde hair in one of those capes, but that the all white was compared to this. Look at the difference. My skin looks pink compared to that white. So imagine if you are white, or that the tall whites would be this color, and then have the look of chalk. I personally would, I guess I want to say, of all of the beings that I've heard about, I would like to know what it would be like to sit down, telepathically or verbally, and have a deep discussion with a tall white. They seem to be the ones who have the deepest concern. The people I've talked to who have worked elbow to elbow with them in, we'll just say, projects on Earth, they have compared the brain of the tall white working in the same office with them as, Linda, if you took a human and gave them 10 Cray computers for a brain, that's what it's like working with a tall white. Well, what would that be like to communicate with? Because the people are communicating with them. It's just that the tall whites have not only, according to people who have worked with them, that they are the most brilliant, that they play by strict rules, very strict rules, that they revere life. Well, I think it would be worth communicating with somebody like that openly. And that in their reverence for life, that they have an understanding of the interstitial patterns, frequencies of this universe, that they understand it to a depth that is probably not comprehensible to even the humans that they work with. And they move point to point, as the Alcubierre warp drive describes in that Navy patent exactly. They know how to access tunnels that are part of the fabric of this universe. And they can move, as I understand it, they can move like something like 50 or 100 light years within 5 24-hour days. That there's that much from, if you had something that was out 50 light years, you wouldn't have to travel for 50 light years. You could do it in 5 24-hour days if you know how to move in the tunnels, and you have a spacecraft that is conscious. So the spacecraft in its consciousness with the tall whites also relates to the frequencies of consciousness in the universe where the tunnels are, and that all of it can work together and move point to point. And I wish we were being taught all of this in schools. I wish we were being taught all of this as humanity. But the argument against us knowing is what has been described to me. The tall whites can be asked questions and they will stop all communication. And that they control strictly what humans can handle versus what they do not want humans to have, because we are still considered a dangerous baby. We are a dangerous baby species. So again, if that's true, then the tall whites, by every other definition of what they are, with reverence for all life, they would be strict. They would not want us to launch nuclear missiles, not any country on Earth to launch nuclear missiles. And therefore, it would seem that it would be the tall whites or a program of the tall whites that would have been interfering with our Minuteman missile development going back for the end of the 1950s onward. And what would they be doing tonight in their observation of Putin, Russia versus Ukraine and that area? I would assume that the tall whites are extremely up to speed on every single thing that is happening, and that if it's true that they do not want humanity to kill itself, which is we appear to be good at doing, if they want to see humanity with their strong souls, meaning Homo sapiens sapien, I think have very strong, important souls, and they may recognize that. How do you help a dangerous baby species, as we are, to get past the kind of horror that we are experiencing yet again on planet Earth? How do you get a civilization that is intelligent, empathic, strong with souls, but not very bright about how difficult it is to have humanity at 8 billion on planet Earth without having some kind of agreement, a survival agreement that the environment must be number one priority on the planet or all else loses. And we haven't reached that stage. We fight about what is a healthy, solid, evolving planet. We fight about it, and we make money be the first priority. Money should not be the first priority. It should be the health of a planet that can sustain life in an educated and collaborative way. If humans could get to that level, which I'm assuming that the tall whites have relationships with several planets that are collaborative, not destructive. So we are at that decade that has been described to me often, that 2020 to 2030 was going to be pivotal on planet Earth about whether Homo sapiens sapien makes it to the end of this century or not. Why can't we be introduced to the brilliant, revering life, tall whites? That's a mystery to me. But it may be that the tall whites know so much more that they would answer if they were here. Because you have to learn how to live this on your own without war, without destruction, and especially how to be stewards of your planet Earth. If you destroy the planet, you have destroyed yourselves. Okay, Ian, what else?
Linda, I just want to do the super chats this evening from the generous viewers. Moonbird, Yasmin Shams, Shane, Joanna Johnson, Buddha Lion, Angel McGreen, Whisper of Love, Lorraine Enman Aldred, Vicky Martinez, Daniel Gomez, Rudy Jacquez, Kevin Burrows, John Hobart. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you, you guys. It means everything to know that you all who are, gosh, Moonbird, for how long? I can't thank you enough, all of you who have helped sustain. And now we're at the 200,000, and I hope we keep growing and evolving, and that we're going to get through this decade learning more and maybe being introduced to tall whites and Nordics and those that are supportive of us. And if that happens and the Earth stops warring, then what a wonderful decade it could end up being, instead of the dangerous, dangerous one it has been described for so long as being a challenge. So thank you, all of you. And for those of you who have not subscribed, it doesn't cost you anything. Just click on that red arrow and it helps Earthfiles in the YouTube world. And click on the like button. All of it helps us keep growing. And thank you for being here and putting in the super chats. Ian, are you okay? It sounded like you fell down a hill.
Well, I'm okay here. Just getting my papers in order. I've got another question for you here, Linda. Are you ready for this one?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I keep hearing that the Greys were created by the tall whites or Nordics to carry out tasks for them, like robot-type creatures. How can this coexist with crush sites and finding dead bodies of Greys? Or does this coexist with the idea that Greys have been part of our history for thousands of years and have genetically mingled with humans if they are part robot or part made by other aliens? I guess they're talking about the difference between the AI Greys and the biological Greys.
And it is the biggest mystery to me, because I remember talking with Brian Scott, who back in the 70s was I think he was only 20 years old, something like that. And he was out in a desert spot in California, and he was doing practice shooting with a gun, and I think there was a friend with him who witnessed. And a craft landed, and beings came out, and it started the Brian Scott huge story, in which he was introduced to the concept of, at least in Peru and Lake Titicaca and those areas, that extraterrestrials were responsible for the construction of much of that part of the world, and that he, Brian Scott, was transformed into something called Voltar. I was able to screen a video of him with the voice sounding of a deep voice, and that Brian Scott was replaced for a period of time by this Voltar. After this dramatic experience as a 20-some-year-old, the whole rest of Brian Scott's life was his unfolding or encountering or having different interactions. And he ended up doing this book. I think it's 750 pages or something. It's a huge book. He was the first person that I sat down and talked with who was trying to explain that there were Greys that were organic, that there were lots of little Greys and different size Greys who were artificial, and said to me in those discussions, Linda, our moon is a machine. The Greys are responsible with others putting it where it is. Someday it will be announced that there is a metal sphere, a certain depth down below the surface, that is the machine. Inside the center of our moon are computers and technology that the grays, and he always was talking about the grays in relationship to the moon. But if you took all of the various discussions that we had over a period of time and you boiled it down, it would be that there are grays who have tried to warn humans, that there are other grays that are considered to work like parasites, and that they will come to a planet and embed themselves in some way, and eventually they will take over the planet, while there are other grays that will be here on the Earth and they will try to help us. The relationship to the tall whites and the Nordics, I've heard nothing but very superficial sentences, and I personally have no depth of any knowledge about the tall whites and the Nordics making the grays. In fact, I have had quite a long discussion with a source who said the tall grays, they are in Enti Eridani on my star map, that these 8-foot, even 9-foot tall, thin grays with the large heads that some people have drawn, quite different from the gray on Whitley Strieber's book, or that have these sort of heads, or the pumpkin heads. There's a whole bunch. And then there are the 2-footers, 2.5-footers, 3-footers. Those are all AI as I understand it. The question is, are there older, more ancient, tall grays that perhaps even are before the height of the tall whites? And the only way I can contribute anything here is to say, when you look at these maps that have been done, starting with what most, I know Roger Penrose said it was not a singularity. So we'll just say whatever was some sort of a beginning point in this universe, it's now measured at 13.8 billion years old. And I've talked about this before on my channel here. So if you come through first billion, second billion, third billion, fourth billion, what has happened in the universe in those first 4 billion years? Then there's fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. There's more billions. Then you get up to 13.4, getting close to 14 billion. And as Michio Kaku did, you divide up what we think is the quote-unquote age of the universe, call it evolutionary epochs of the universe. Divide 13.8 by 4. And you'll get, maybe we'll just round it up, like 4 billion, 4 billion, 4 billion, 4 billion. Well, what happened and evolved and became organic life, in which period, epoch in the universe, they would be the primordial organic life. What came from them and what kept evolving epoch by epoch by epoch, and we're now in the 4th epoch. I've been told that the tall whites and the Nordics and the grays all have manipulated DNA in the creation of a variety of humanoids on this planet. How would Homo sapiens sapien ever have a clear picture of what had been done for the last 13 billion years of life evolving? And now we are here with, seems to me, powerful reasons to survive as an intelligent, soulful species, but that the very species who may have been the designers and architect of the evolution of genetic manipulation on this laboratory planet, they may be holding off introducing themselves to us because maybe they consider that we are too irrational and violent. That's a possibility. I don't agree with that. I think that humanity needs to be told the whole truth and then start psychologically, mentally, physically, a whole new evolutionary route with truth and working with other beings who could guide, help, and teach. Lacking that, from Brian Scott, his huge book, my many discussions with him, interacting with so many different beings, turning into a Voltar consciousness, and we still don't have solid, provable answers. So, Ian, that is kind of a multifaceted answer to an excellent question. And we have time for one more.
Well, you asked for comments. Some people are referencing their own experiences. Here's one from Esther. She says, I was visited 3 nights in a row. Red orbs came into my room, communicated with me. My husband witnessed this. Not human, female ET. I'm an experiencer.
She associates the 3 orbs with being the first presentation of a female extraterrestrial that followed up for the red orbs. Is my asking, can she reply back?
Yeah, let's see if Esther will communicate some more information to us. It sounds fascinating, but she's one of many people who have said that this starts with orbs being seen.
That's what I would. That's what I was.
She says her husband witnessed it.
That's what I was headed for, is that throughout the 43 years that I have been trying to get to the bottom of animal mutilations, human abductions, and all, one of the constants are lights. Small, the size of a ping pong ball or even smaller, to the size of a baseball, to the size of a softball, to the size of a basketball, and then some bigger in the Himalayas, out of which people have seen people come out of what looks like a large orb. But Ian, this is fascinating because I assume it's technology, and that there are associations like John Burroughs in RAF Bentwaters. The blue lights, small blue lights that came up in several hypnosis sessions that I was there witnessing. It was blue small orbs that were keeping John from going forward toward some kind of a large light that he could see. Blue lights can interfere with abductees. Green seems to have a completely different category. White is a different category. Gold is a different category. The red, I'd be very interested to know if the red lights metamorphosized into the humanoid female that she's referencing.
Well, Esther says that the experiences started as a child in Arizona. She's also come back to say the elongated skull, tall, grey. They have very wrinkled face and skin and are powerful psychics. They can levitate humans, very ancient and very cold.
I think that would be in that category of what are called the tall ancient greys from Indi Eridani. And it's on my star map. And here, this is a very good example. Each of us who have been trying to understand the complexities of other intelligences from other places in this universe interacting with Earth, we only have facets We only have small glimpses of other realities, like my Volume 1 and Volume 2. And we need an integrated, huge evolution into whole understanding, a completely new understanding of how life first emerged and evolved and went through various chapters on this planet directly related to extraterrestrial experimentation with life on this earth. That, as far as I know, is the fundamental truth. How, from that fundamental truth, do you get to the millions and millions of facets that could explain how we humans are on this planet Earth now, at this particular juncture in time, in which people have been predicting in military and science and aerospace sources that 2020 to 2030 could be the existential decade of this planet. If there has been knowledge like that for so long, why wouldn't the tall whites and the Nordics and the grays that want to help us, why wouldn't they have been introduced by now to prevent existential futures? So that's, I guess that's where, right now, we will close out, and I will look forward to seeing the chat comments and hoping that there are others that are in the audience that I understand do not want to be public, but that you could communicate with me if you have actual professional knowledge, because I would like to keep going forward as constructively as I can, sharing information that a lot of people will be astonished by, but for those of us who have been studying for a very long time, we have an evolution of information that comes up to tonight, March 2nd, 2022. So thank you, everyone. Let's get your questions and recorded and coming to our questions at earthfiles.com, and look forward to March 23rd, having a fun time with your questions, celebrating that we have broken through 200,000 subscribers. I embrace all of you, and until next week, may you all stay safe, and prayers, that Ukraine survives the bullying evil from Moscow. See you next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC, and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.